Deathpixie disclaimer. This video was originally recorded in September 2024. There is swearing and profanity. Sources are listed in the description. This video is not monetized. Any ads you see provide revenue to the hosting site, not the creators. If you made it this far, geez, you have a lot of patience.
Death Pixie dancing on the lip of madness!
Welcome to Shitty PowerPoint Theater. Dignity not included.
Yeah. So the next person, you're going to notice he actually doesn't have Sir attached to his name. Most of the early prime ministers do. He doesn't have this because he refused that title because he had his own feelings about getting titles and how that creates hierarchy. Remember, the British class system was very, very lockdown exclusive type thing. I'm actually impressed with India for having an even more strict class caste system, but I digress. So the next person we have who served between was Alexander Mackenzie. So he was part of the Liberal Party. He had one term where he was in government, lived a good life. He had one wife, Helen Neal, and then he had a second wife, Jane Sim, and 3 children. So he's considered Canada's stainless statesman, and he came from a masonry building background, and in fact is responsible for many of the historical buildings that you see in Ontario, and in particular in Kingston, Ontario, which is quite cool. So what did he do? So firstly, I will say that during his time, the first iteration of the Indian Act, which was an act to amend and consolidate all laws respecting Indians, First Nations people, was passed. So at this point, their lives are governed under the Indian Act. Grants First Nations people the right to vote, but only if they give up their Indian status. So please note this. So when we start talking about suffrage and stuff like that, that's a point is when they are allowed to vote, no matter their status. The reason why they can vote, because if they give up their status, they are no longer considered quote unquote Indians. So
yeah,
not very great. And if you notice, that was in the con. We do have a lot of pros. So the Supreme Court of Canada came into effect under him. The Royal Military College of Canada was established. There was the District of Keewatin, which was created. He was Minister of Public Works when the parliamentary buildings were happening, and he actually oversaw the completion of those buildings. He is, in fact, responsible for a secret staircase that the Prime Minister can use if he wants to avoid the media scrimmage outside his office, which I always thought was really funny because he was like, I don't want to talk to these people, goodbye. So I always thought that was funny. It's useful, admittedly it is useful to have that, but I just thought it was funny. He introduced the secret ballot, which is incredibly important because it used to be open voting, the creation of the Office of the Auditor General, and the Intercontinental Railway was completed when he was in office as well. There were issues dealing with the aftermath of the Panic of 1873, and then, like I said, the Indian Act. So he's an interesting person, and we'll talk about that. So one of my favorite quotes by him was, "Logic sometimes has very little to do with political action." So he's a very vocal opponent of religious and political entitlement, as well as corruption in government. So he's very vocal and against that. He fought for the supremacy of Parliament and honesty within government, and continued the national building program that had been begun by his predecessor. So that's what I want to point out. He and his predecessor were not part of the same political party, but he continued the program. And that's what's important here, is we're seeing something that I think in like 120 years, as we move forward, we start missing.
Lost. Yes.
Yeah, it gets lost. It turns into, I don't like what you did, I'm gonna dismantle it no matter how much it costs, blah 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 blah. And that doesn't make any sense. That's not where a legacy comes from.
Yeah.
I have some other quotes, which I just feel the quotes let us get to know them a bit more.
Yeah.
Would you like to hear them?
Absolutely.
All right. I have always held those political opinions which point to the universal brotherhood of man, no matter in what rank of life he may have taken his origin. We shall all respect the principles of each other and do nothing that would be regarded as an act of oppression to any portion of the people. And finally, I am sure that in Canada, the people appreciate this principle, and the general intelligence which prevails over the country is such that I am sure there is no danger of reactionary policy ever finding a response in the hearts of any considerable number of our people.
I see.
Yeah. So it's a very whatchamacallit. He was trying to be fair and honest and all of this other stuff. So we'll get into the
Okay,
CV.
is there... Yeah.
Sorry, were you saying something?
Yeah. I was, at least on my end of things, a lot of what you said got cut off, so I'm wondering if there's internet issues.
Oh, there might be. Do you need me to repeat what I said?
No, I'm good. I've got the most of it, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, CV. So remember, I said he was a stonemason. He was the foreman on multiple monuments and buildings in Kingston. He was also a contractor. So, Mackenzie Hall Cultural Centre in Windsor, Ontario, the Kent County Courthouse and Jail in Chatham, Ontario as well. He also bid unsuccessfully for the construction of the Parliament buildings. Like I said, vocal opponent of religious and political entitlement, vocal opponent of corruption in government. He had what is summarized as a working man's view on fiscal policy, but passionately for the equality and elimination of all forms of class of distinction. That is why he refused a title to get Sir added to his name. He was the editor of the pro-reformist newspaper Lambton Shield. He was the secretary of the Reform Party for Lambton. He also campaigned for George Brown. He was in a Legislative Assembly MP and was undefeated until he died. Went to House of Commons, became Prime Minister. He actually refused the offer of knighthood 3 times. He also declined appointment to the UK Privy Council. Hence, he does not have the title Right Honourable, because again, he was very much against that kind of class distinction of the time.
Yep.
He also was the first president of the North American Life Assurance Company. So, there you go. Any final thoughts?
It's interesting when it gets to Alex Mackenzie, because he's one of the few prime ministers who you think, regardless of political affiliation, truly practiced what he preached. And you can see that within the policies that he enacted, except when it came to Indigenous peoples. However, if you possessed a working man's view of policy, you may have also possessed a working man's view of Indigenous relations. I'm not trying to defend his actions at all, but I will say very, very much what you see is what you get.
Yeah. There's nothing hidden here. He's like,
No.
He's an open book. Although we don't have
He's as open as as open as he could be at the time.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Trapdoor Crabsworth for deathpixie. If you liked our content, please like this video and subscribe. And if you want to see more, just check out our links in the description. Do it. Do it or Myry will kill you.